Welcome to Simplifying Radicals. Before we go on, you should already know your perfect square roots. Take the time to memorize them, at least up to the square root of 225. All right, let's get down to business. This is a radical symbol, and underneath the radical symbol, you would put your radicand, which is a number. I think of a radical symbol as a jail cell or a prison, and like prison, you want to get out. And the only way you could get out of a prison is if you are perfectly behaved, but in this case, you can only get out of the radical if you're a perfect square root. And in this case, I know that 16 is a perfect square root. I know it's 4, so I will just bring out the 4 and lose the radical symbol. Now, what if you have a number on the outside of that radical symbol, and that number is called a coefficient, by the way, and any perfect square that comes out of the radical symbol, you will multiply times the coefficient. For example, in this case, we know the square root of 16 is 4. I'm going to multiply that times the coefficient and get 20 as my final answer. If you have a radical with a non-perfect square root? Well, that means you're going to have to break up the radical into its factors. And when you do, always choose the greatest perfect factor. Now, if you know your factors, great. If you don't worry. You have a graphing calculator that will find them for you. Start by pressing the y equals button. This will allow you to input an equation. The equation is fairly easy to remember. It is y equals the radicand, which in this case is 48, and you're going to divide that by x. Once your equation is inputted, you will press second and then table, and that'll bring up a list of factors. For example, there's 224, 316, 412, 68. I'm going to stay away from anything with the decimal. Now, when I'm picking the factors, I want to pick the greatest perfect factor. In that case, I'm looking for perfect factors, and we have 2 is a perfect factor, 16 is a perfect factor, 4 is a perfect factor, and 9 is a perfect factor, but notice it has that decimal, and I'm going to stay away from it. So now that I have my list of perfect squares, I'm going to choose the one that has the greatest perfect square. And in this case, it's going to be the 16 and the 3. Now that I know my factors, I'll put each of them under a radical. So we have 16 and 3. So you should notice we have a perfect square root that could come out, which is 4. But with radical 3, there's nothing I could do. So I'm just going to write it next to the 4 and keep it there. And that is your answer. Get one more. Here we have 4 times the radical 320. So what's the first thing we're going to do? Well, we got to break that 320 into its factors. We start by doing y equals, which will give us the ability to input our equation, which is going to be y equals 320 divided by x. We'll press the second button and then table to get our list of factors. And in this case, we have 1 and 320, 4 and 80, 5 and 64. We have 9, but once again, that's in a decimal, so I won't pay attention to it. And I'll stick with those. And the greatest one out of all of them is that 64. So I will break up the radical 320 into radical 64 and radical 5. What do you notice? I notice 64 is a perfect square root, and the square root of 64 is 8. I'm going to take that, multiply it by my coefficient to get 32, and I'm going to bring down the radical 5. And that is your answer, because you can't break down this radical 5 anymore. Now it's your turn to try. So pause the video and try and simplify the radical of 72. And when you're done, unpause the video to reveal the answer. Well, I hope you got this right. If you did, throw yourself a dance party. And remember, the only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. This has been a Struggling Student Productions. If you like this video, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel.